Hello, everyone. This is Megan again, and today I am going to give you my 10 quick tips to classroom routines. The first quick tip that I have for everyone is to not try to plan for everything. It creates a lot of stress on you as the teacher, and unfortunately, most of those plans are going to fall through when you step into the classroom anyway, because as we all know, being in a classroom is a completely different animal than when we're sitting, say, from the comfort of our homes, making those valuable lesson plans that we all cherish so much. Quick tip number 2 is going to be that a list of rules may not be necessary for your classroom to succeed. I personally learned this lesson the hard way because my first semester in, I went in and I was like, these are my rules. And I had about 7. And it really, again, just created too much stress for me, because once you say these are the rules and you better follow them to your students, then they expect you to uphold that. And by the end of the semester, sometimes even halfway through the semester, you're like, okay, this kid broke rule number 4. Am I really going to pick this fight right now and hash this out? 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, you're not. So don't come up with a whole big old list of rules, because you probably really don't need them if your classroom is functioning effectively based on learning practices and procedures in the first place. Quick tip number 3, students need to help develop the procedures that you expect to put in place into your classroom. This gives them a sense of accountability and a sense of responsibility, and it lets you know what they're comfortable with. These are the behaviors that I know I can perform. That's why I'm saying it's okay for you to hold me to that standard. So get your kids involved. Let them tell you what they are capable of doing and listen to that. Quick tip number 4 is going to be to implement those procedures early in the year. The first few days of the school year, they are 9 times out of 10 full of paperwork and full of get to know you activities, but you do need to establish some ground rules and say, hey, this is how things need to work. We need to go ahead and practice this. Not to the point where you need to reprimand students for not following them, just as a guide that, hey, in the next couple weeks, I'm going to expect this to happen, kind of like second nature. Quick tip number 5, and we are halfway through our list, observe students practicing those procedures. Once you've got them in and the kids know this is what you expect, take a look and see what they're doing. Are they following them to your expectations? Do you need to modify that procedure a little bit? Is it going well, or is it something that you kind of just need to kick the bucket on? Quick tip number 6, allow students to peer instruct. By this, I mean, if you give the instructions the first time, go through because you need to get it out and have everyone know about it. Switch it up a little bit. Once you're done giving those instructions, ask the kid in the classroom, hey, can you repeat those instructions for your classmates, and let's make sure everybody's got an understanding of what's going on here today? Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. They have a way of communicating with one another that sometimes as teachers we overlook, and so they speak each other's language, for lack of a better way of saying it. They can communicate in ways that we may not be able to communicate with them, and they get a better understanding of it hearing it from somebody who's on their level. We are on quick tip number 7 now. Quick tip number 7 is to not give oral instructions to the whole group or the whole class of students, especially when you've got students who are working on something different. This is only going to confuse those students and make your job a whole lot harder, because now you have to go around to the room and correct everybody who shouldn't have been listening to you and did, or who should have listened to you and then didn't. I find it easier just to use something such as task cards, which we already talked about earlier this semester, and written instructions for small group activities so that people don't get confused. Well, I wanted to do this, or I thought you were told me I was doing that. Oral instructions, not always the best idea when you're talking about a large group of students. Quick tip number 8 goes back to number 7, assign those different tasks to students. Give everybody something unique to do in the classroom. I like this tip because, one, it cuts down on the cheating factor. I don't know how many of us still deal with something like that in our classrooms, but it does cut down on that. And assigning different tasks gives students a sense of responsibility in class. So say if in my classroom, for example, we read a text, I have 5 different groups all doing different activities, and now each of those groups is accountable for their activity because they now have to teach it back to the classmates who didn't do that activity. So assign those different tasks to the kids. Give everybody something to do. Quick tip number 9 is going to be leave enough time at the end of the day for a recap or a review of that particular lesson. This was probably my biggest fallback or not so great of a thing that I have going on in my classroom, because I just love seeing kids get engaged with something, and we would be on a roll, and then next thing I know, the bell's ringing and everybody's running out of the door at the end of the day. So leave that time, because kids need to be able to stop and say, this is what we did, this is what I need to do tomorrow when I come to class. Give them a checkpoint, so to speak. And then review, debrief, make sure everything's going okay. Go back to that quick tip of number 5 and observe those practices. Make sure everything's going the way you want it to go. And our last and final quick tip we have for tonight is make students aware of their role in their own education. This goes back to asking your students to design those procedures that they expect to follow. But once kids get involved in their education and they see that they have a choice and a voice in what's going on in the classroom, they are that much more invested and interested in what you're trying to do. And it's no longer you forcing something on them. It's a plan that they have come up with and something that they want to do. So get your kids involved. Let them know, hey, this is your education. What happens with it and how it goes solely depends on you. So those are my 10 quick tips to classroom routines from Chapter 5 of the Tomlinson and Bow text for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I had a lot of fun working with this, and I cannot wait to see everyone else's top 10.